It was just another ordinary morning in Mr. Jenkins' classroom, or at least that's what I thought. The room buzzed quietly with the usual chatter and rustling of papers. But then, everything changed in a heartbeat. Mr. Jenkins, our history teacher, was known for being loud and sharp. But that day, his words cut deeper than usual. He pointed straight at Jason, the quiet kid who barely ever spoke up, and laughed. "Hey Jason, you're so silent, I'm starting to think you're invisible. Maybe you're scared of speaking because you're hiding something, huh?" The class froze. You could hear a pin drop. Jason's eyes didn't move. His face stayed calm, but I saw something flicker in them, like a shadow no one else could see. His hands clenched quietly under the desk, but he said nothing. Everyone else was uncomfortable. Some tried not to look, pretending nothing was wrong. Others glanced nervously at the teacher, unsure if anyone would step in. But me? I could feel the tension in the air, like the calm before a storm. I knew Jason wasn't just some shy kid. There was something deeper behind his silence, something heavy, something he carried inside him every day. Mr. Jenkins laughed again, but this time, his voice sounded forced. The room waited, holding its breath. Because nobody could have guessed what would happen next. Nobody was ready to see the side of Jason that no one had ever seen before. Our classroom was one of those places that felt like a small world of its own. Desks were arranged in neat rows, with posters about history and famous leaders taped to the walls. Most days, the chatter was light, with kids joking about homework or the latest TV show. But there was always an undercurrent, a kind of quiet tension that you couldn't quite put your finger on. Mr. Jenkins ruled the room like a drill sergeant. He expected attention and fast answers. If you weren't quick enough, you'd hear a sharp comment or a sarcastic jab. Most of us learned to keep our heads down, trying not to get on his bad side. But Jason was different. He sat at the very back, almost hidden behind a column of books. He never raised his hand, never asked questions, and barely spoke unless the teacher forced him to. To most people, he just looked shy or uninterested. But I could tell there was more to it. Jason's eyes were quiet but distant. Sometimes, when the class got noisy or Mr. Jenkins raised his voice, I noticed Jason's hands trembling just a little under the desk. Other times, he'd flinch when someone dropped a book or laughed too loudly nearby. Little things that most people missed. It was like he was always on edge, waiting for something bad to happen. Mr. Jenkins didn't help. He often made jokes at Jason's expense, like that day when he called him invisible. To him, Jason was an easy target. A kid who didn't fight back. And the class? Well, most of us felt bad, but no one said much. We were too scared of the teacher, or maybe too unsure of how to help. I always wondered what Jason was thinking, what battles he was fighting inside. Because his silence wasn't just shyness. It was something heavier, something that made the classroom feel colder whenever Mr. Jenkins sneered at him. And I knew that if things didn't change soon, something would break. Sometimes, when I looked at Jason, I felt like I was only seeing a shadow of who he really was. Behind those quiet eyes, there was a story nobody knew. One afternoon, after class, I found out a piece of it, something that made me understand why Jason carried so much weight inside him. It was months ago, just before the school year started. I was walking home and saw Jason sitting alone on the park bench near the old playground. His shoulders were hunched, and he stared down at his hands like they were holding invisible cracks. I hesitated but sat down beside him. He didn't say anything at first. Then slowly he started to tell me about a night he could never forget. Jason's voice was barely above a whisper, like he was afraid the memories might trap him again if he spoke too loud. He told me about the fire. His family's house had caught fire late at night, flames swallowing the rooms where he used to laugh and play. Jason was just a kid then, but the smoke and heat were terrifying. He said he remembered the crackling, the blinding orange light, and the sound of his mother shouting his name through the chaos. But what haunted him most wasn't just the fire. It was what came after: the sirens, the cold hospital rooms, the emptiness when he realized some of the people he loved weren't coming back. That night had ripped something from him, something invisible but powerful. He told me he often felt trapped in that moment, even years later. Loud noises would make his heart race. Sudden movements made him freeze. Sometimes when he closed his eyes, he could still smell the smoke. No one at school knew this. Not the teachers, not the students. No one saw the nights Jason spent wide awake, fighting the memories he couldn't escape. The quietness wasn't because he didn't want to talk, it was because the words were too heavy to carry. After that day in the park, I looked at Jason differently. I realized how much pain he was hiding behind that silence. I thought about the way Mr. Jenkins laughed at him, not knowing or maybe not caring what Jason was carrying inside. It was heartbreaking. And yet, even with all that pain, Jason showed up every day. He sat in class, endured the teasing, and kept going, like a warrior wearing invisible armor. But how many of us truly saw him? How many of us understood the battles that shaped him? Not many. That's what made the moment in the classroom that day so powerful. Because Jason wasn't just quiet. He was surviving, and the class, well, they had no idea. That day started like any other. The sun filtered through the windows, and the usual hum of students filling the room was there, except the air felt heavier. Maybe it was because of what I knew about Jason. Maybe it was because Mr. Jenkins seemed sharper than usual. We were in the middle of a history discussion about war and courage. Mr. Jenkins was pacing, waiting for answers. When he stopped at Jason's desk, I felt a chill. "Jason," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "why don't you say something for once? Or are you too scared to speak up? What's the matter? Cat got your tongue?" Jason didn't answer. His eyes flicked down at his desk, and I saw his fingers trembling ever so slightly. It was like the words were stuck in his throat, but not for lack of trying. The class shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Some kids avoided eye contact. A few looked like they wanted to speak up but didn't. Mr. Jenkins smirked and crossed his arms. "You know, I've never seen a kid so quiet and useless in my whole career. Maybe you should just stay silent, you're less embarrassing that way." The words hit Jason like a slap. I could see the tension rise in his jaw. His breathing became uneven. The shaking in his hands grew more obvious now, but he still didn't say a word. I wanted to jump in, say something, anything, but I was frozen. Then Mr. Jenkins laughed. It wasn't a friendly laugh, it was cruel, like he was enjoying watching Jason shrink under his words. "Come on, Jason, don't be shy, or are you just broken?" That was the last straw. Jason's head snapped up. His eyes were no longer quiet or distant, they burned with something fierce. Anger. Pain. A storm that no one had ever seen before. He stood up slowly, deliberately, like he was rising from somewhere deep inside himself. His voice was low but sharp. "I'm not broken." The room went silent. "I'm not invisible, and I'm not scared of you," he said, staring right at Mr. Jenkins. "Jenkins?" Mr. Jenkins blinked, clearly stunned. "Oh really? And what exactly are you then?" Jason took a step closer. "I'm someone who's been through hell and survived. You laugh because you don't understand. You think silence is weakness, but it's not." He paused, looking at all of us, the whole class holding our breath. "You don't see the battles I fight every day. You don't see the nights I spend fighting to keep my mind from breaking. But I'm here. I'm still standing, and your words won't break me." Then something incredible happened. Jason didn't yell. He didn't throw things or storm out. He just stood tall, calm but strong, like a force nobody expected. The class was shocked. We all sat frozen, staring at him. Mr. Jenkins, for the first time, was speechless. I looked around, some faces were wide-eyed. Others looked ashamed, like they realized how wrong the teacher had been. Jason sat back down, the silence stretching like a heavy curtain over the room, but the weight felt different now, like something had shifted. Something had broken, but also something had healed. Mr. Jenkins finally cleared his throat. "Well, that was unexpected." Jason didn't reply. And for once the classroom wasn't filled with the teacher's harsh words. Instead, it held a quiet respect. After that moment, the classroom didn't immediately return to normal. Instead, it felt like the air had been shaken up, stirred in a way none of us expected. The silence stretched, thick and heavy, before whispers started to fill the space. Did you see that? Someone murmured. No one thought he'd say anything. Another voice replied. I watched as the class tried to process what had just happened. Some kids exchanged nervous glances. Others avoided looking at Jason, like they weren't sure how to act anymore. The teacher, Mr. Jenkins, stood awkwardly at the front, his usual confident smirk gone, replaced by a tight, uneasy expression. Later that day, Jason stayed behind after class. I gathered the courage to ask him if he wanted to talk. He didn't hesitate. Slowly, he shared more about the invisible war he fought every day, his PTSD. He explained how that night, years ago when the fire tore through his home, everything changed. The loud noises, the flashing lights, the chaos, they weren't just memories. They were triggers, things that made his body and mind relive the fear all over again. Sometimes, even small things, like a raised voice or sudden movement, would send him spiraling into panic. Jason said the teacher's mocking words had felt like a threat, like he was back in that terrifying moment when he had no control. His silence wasn't weakness. It was his way of trying to survive, to hold himself together when everything inside was breaking. He looked at me, eyes steady but tired. I don't want people to feel sorry for me. I just want them to understand. Word spread quickly. Teachers and students alike began to talk. Mr. Jenkins was called into a meeting with the school principal. He was told that his behavior was unacceptable and that he needed to apologize, not just to Jason, but to the entire class. The next day, Mr. Jenkins stood in front of us with a different look, one that was more serious, almost humbled. I was wrong, he said simply. Jason, I didn't understand what you've been through, and I'm sorry for the way I treated you. No one should be made to feel invisible or less than. Some students nodded, some whispered thank you, and Jason just nodded quietly. It wasn't a big dramatic scene, but it was real. Slowly, things began to change in the classroom. The teasing stopped. The whispers turned into quiet conversations about kindness and respect. Some classmates started sitting closer to Jason, asking him about his interests, inviting him to join group work. I saw Jason smile more often. It was small at first, a quick flash of warmth, but it grew with each passing day. The class was learning something important. Behind every quiet face is a story, a struggle we might never see. And sometimes, all it takes is a little understanding to make someone feel seen. Jason's strength wasn't just in standing up that day. It was in surviving every day before, in holding on when it felt impossible. And in the end, that's what changed us all. After everything that happened, the classroom felt different. It wasn't just about Jason anymore, it was about all of us. The silence that once filled the room, the tension that hung like a shadow, started to lift. Slowly, kindness found its way into our little world. I realized something important: so many of us carry battles inside that no one can see. Invisible struggles that shape who we are, how we act, and how we survive. Jason's story reminded me, and all of us, that silence isn't always empty. Sometimes, it's full of pain, strength, or both. The way our class changed after that day was quiet but powerful. Mr. Jenkins stopped mocking anyone. His voice lost some of its harsh edge, replaced with a softer tone that felt almost respectful. It wasn't perfect, but it was better. And the students, we began to look at each other differently. Instead of quick judgments or whispers behind backs, we started listening. We asked questions. We made space for those who needed it. Jason, in particular, started to come out of his shell. I noticed small changes: a hand raised to answer a question, a brief laugh shared with a classmate, the way he held his head a little higher. It wasn't instant, but it was real. Step by step, he gained confidence, and with that he began to trust us. One afternoon, I saw him helping a younger student with math. He didn't just give answers, he patiently explained things, his voice steady and sure. It was a side of him no one had seen before. That day, I thought about how much we all need each other. How simple kindness can mean the world to someone fighting a silent battle. How understanding can heal wounds we didn't even know were there. This experience taught me that everyone deserves respect, Not because they're perfect or loud or easy to notice, but because they're human. Because beneath every quiet face is a story worth hearing. If you take anything away from Jason's story, let it be this: be kind, be patient, look deeper. You never know what someone is carrying inside, because sometimes all it takes is one moment of understanding to change a life. And that change can start with you. If Jason's story moved you, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more real stories that matter. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Share your own experiences or reflections about kindness, understanding, or overcoming challenges in the comments below. Your story might help someone else feel less alone. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family to spread awareness and empathy. Thank you so much for listening and being here. Remember, kindness is powerful. Let's all try to be a little kinder every day.